welcome to Tales of Honor Podcast, a podcast dedicated to telling the true stories of the Congressional Medal of Honor. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tales of Honor Podcast. I'm your host, Christoph Ambrosch, and tonight's episode is episode 95, once again to the Korean War. And it's being brought to you by The Bearded Detailer. Visit thebeardeddetailer.com. Why? Well, all of your automotive detailing solutions are there. Good products from Optimum Polymer Technologies and Laminex Protective Films, made all right here in the USA. And use the promo code TOH10, and that'll get you 10% off your order. And just know that when you use that promo code, that 75% of the profits of your order are going to be donated to the Congressional Medal of Honor Society every month, as I have been doing this entire time. Be sure to pick up your shirts there. Tales of Honor Podcast t-shirts and the Bearded Detailer t-shirts are all there. Comfortable tri-blend t-shirts. They're going fast. Limited supplies for now. And it's good stuff. The Bearded Detailer, your dirt is his business. And now, a tale of honor. William F. Dean was born on the 1st of August, 1899 in Carlisle, Illinois, where he grew up with his brother and sister. His interest in the military began when he was very young and would watch the U.S. Military Academy cadets performing drills in the 1904 St. Louis Exposition. William became active in weightlifting and running and would continue these activities through most of his life. He became the town's main paperboy, and after high school, he applied to the U.S. Military Academy. He was rejected and was also too young to enlist in the U.S. Army during World War I without his parents' permission. William instead went on to the University of California at Berkeley and studied pre-law and had a goal of attaining a Doctor of Law degree, but ended up completing a Bachelor of Arts degree in 1922 before joining the Army. While attending Berkeley, William was a member of the school's Reserve Officer Training Corps, ROTC, and upon graduation was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the California Army National Guard. He went active duty in 1923, and his first assignment was in Utah at Fort Douglas with the 38th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division. After 3 years in the Panama Canal Zone, William returned to Fort Douglas before attending the U.S. Army Infantry School at Fort Benning, Georgia. He then served with a tank battalion before taking a course at the tank school, and after moving around a lot to many different bases, was promoted to captain in 1936 and then major in 1940. With his new rank, William was assigned to Washington, D.C.'s Department of War as a junior member of the General Staff and then as an assistant secretary. Once the U.S. entered World War II, William's ranks moved quite fast to lieutenant colonel, and then brigadier general within 2 years. In 1943, he was the head of the Requirements Division before becoming an assistant commander of the 44th Infantry Division. This division was scheduled to leave for the European theater, and William went with, despite being injured in a flamethrower accident. The division landed on Omaha Beach 3 months after the initial D-Day landings and went on to relieve the 79th Infantry Division. Throughout their movement through Germany, William was promoted to division commander and then to the rank of major general, and his division took 30,000 prisoners of war during the surrender of the German army on VE Day, Victory in Europe, the 8th of May, 1945. The 44th Infantry Division returned to the U.S. after a short occupation duty and began its training to deploy to the Pacific Theater. The war had come to an end before the division would deploy, and William oversaw the drawdown of the division, and he was relieved of command on the 1st of November, 1945, and the 44th Infantry Division was disbanded by the end of the month. William then organized and directed command classes at Fort Leavenworth and was then assigned to South Korea as a deputy to the U.S. military governor. Our occupation of South Korea came to an end when the new South Korean government was elected on the 15th of August, 1948, and then William, along with his 7th Infantry Division, moved to Sapporo, Japan, and eventually was given command of the 24th Infantry Division. When the Korean War broke out on the 25th of June, 1950, Williams' division was the closest U.S. ground unit to the Korean Peninsula and they were directed to deploy as quickly as possible in order to resist North Korean forces. For several weeks, William's division did its best to delay the North Koreans from advancing south, and they were met with many defeats. On the 12th of July, he ordered 3 regiments to establish a defensive position around Taejon. 1 week later, Taejon was surrounded by the North Koreans, and they moved in from the west, north, and south. They fought for 2 days, and North Korean soldiers were often disguised as farmers in order to enter the city. William would eventually join the men on the front lines and help hunt T-34 tanks with new armor-piercing super bazookas. He even went as far as personally attacking a tank with a hand grenade and destroyed it. Each time the division tried to establish a defensive line, it would get pushed back by the much larger North Korean force. It was William's actions on the 20th of July when Taejon was overrun, and the weeks after, that would earn him the Medal of Honor. The citation reads, Major General Dean distinguished himself by conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the repeated risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. In command of a unit suddenly relieved from occupation duties in Japan and as yet untried in combat, faced with a ruthless and determined enemy, highly trained and overwhelmingly superior in numbers, he felt it his duty to take action which to a man of his military experience and knowledge was clearly apt to result in his death. He personally and alone attacked an enemy tank while armed only with a hand grenade. He also directed the fire of his tanks from an exposed position with neither cover nor concealment, while under observed artillery and small arms fire. When the town of Taejon was finally overrun, he refused to ensure his own safety by leaving with the leading elements, but remained behind organizing his retreating forces, directing stragglers, and was last seen assisting the wounded to a place of safety. These actions indicate that Major General Dean felt it necessary to sustain the courage and resolution of his troops by examples of excessive gallantry committed always at the threatened portions of his front lines. The magnificent response of his unit to the willing and cheerful sacrifice, made with full knowledge of its certain cost, is history. The success of this phase of the campaign is in large measure due to Major General Dean's heroic leadership, courageous and loyal devotion to his men, and complete disregard for personal safety. What the citation doesn't say is that while William escaped on foot, he stopped to get water for one of his wounded men, and he fell down a steep slope. He was knocked unconscious and awoke to a gash in his head and a broken shoulder. He wandered the mountains alone for 36 days without food and medical treatment. He had lost about 80 pounds during this time and eventually was being led by people he thought were helping him to safety. Instead, they led him into a prearranged ambush by the North Koreans 35 miles south of Taejon. He did his best to keep his identity a secret, but later a South Korean, whom had worked under him before the war, recognized him. He was then moved to Pyongyang and given larger living quarters, but remained sick due to poorly prepared food. William was interrogated daily and was threatened with harm, but wasn't actually tortured. He was never with another American during his capture and was kept alone. William was presumed to have been dead until he was interviewed on the 18th of December 1951 and was returned to the UN forces after the Armistice Agreement on the 4th of September 1953. William returned home and not only received the Medal of Honor, which he said he did not deserve, but also received a parade in New York City, and after his retirement in 1955, the Combat Infantry Badge. This award is not usually given to general officers since they are not usually on the front line. William was the second general to receive it. William lived out a quiet life of retirement in San Francisco with his wife Mildred. William F. Dean died on the 24th of August, 1981, at the age of 82, and is buried in the San Francisco National Cemetery, plot GHT 353B. And that was A Tale of Honor. Thank you so much for listening to Tales of Honor podcast. And if you like this podcast, please be sure to leave a nice review, a good rating, and tell a friend. Please also make sure that you're subscribed. This way you never miss an episode. I'd hate for you to miss the one that you'd really want to hear. You know about the one I'm talking about. If you're missing it, you can go ahead and see all the episodes up on talesofhonorpodcast.com. You can also see them over on Facebook. You can see what days certain ones aired on Instagram. And like I said, all of them are up at talesofhonorpodcast.com along with more information. If you have any questions or comments, you can send them to talesofhonorpodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, I'm Christoph Ambrose. Thanks for listening.